The American dream has always been alive and well, and that's one reason. I have 16 grandchildren, Rachel, and that's one reason I ran for office. I want to see this country continue to give the opportunity for the American dream to all young people, in fact, young and old, that are entering our country.
We are joined today on the Daily Signal podcast by Congressman Brian Babin of Texas. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us today.
Great to be with you, Rachel.
Well, you're here at CPAC and you're talking about sanctuary cities and our open borders and how they reward lawbreakers. Can you talk a little bit about this and how this is happening?
Oh, it's incredible. The open borders are absolutely, in my opinion, they're the greatest threat this country faces. And in order for us to really do something about it, and fix it on a permanent basis, we've got to have Congress to be helping our great president in securing our border. And yet we can't get the Democrats to do that. We've got over 1 million illegal aliens in this country who have already had their day in court, adjudicated cases, been given orders to be removed from the country, and yet the Democrats don't want to carry out the law. And they're so hypocritical that they say no one's above the law in this country, especially Donald J. Trump, and that's what they used during the impeachment proceedings. And yet they're putting millions of illegal aliens above the law. If you want to have a nation that's successful and with freedom and liberties, you've got to have a nation of laws, and you can't just obey the ones you like and ignore the ones you don't like. And then you asked about sanctuary cities. This is probably the most ludicrous, insane policy that I've ever seen in my life, where you have elected officials, whether they're in cities, counties, or whole states, that absolutely are putting criminal aliens ahead of their own voting, tax-paying citizens. And let me tell you, criminal activity, crimes that are committed by criminal aliens, those are preventable crimes. These people shouldn't be here to begin with. And then when they are deported and they re-enter, it's supposed to be a felony. And yet they're being shielded. The sanctuary leadership, the elected officials, are telling their law enforcement agencies, do not cooperate with the federal immigration. So they get turned loose. New York City, just a few weeks ago, had a 92-year-old woman murdered, raped by a criminal alien who had been released in a sanctuary operation. And she would be alive today had they not had the sanctuary policy. So I think the American people are going to be really, really interested in seeing these types of policies abolished. And I'm so happy to report, Rachel, that the courts have just ruled that the president wanting to withhold funding to these sanctuary cities, to keep them from getting federal funds because of their violation of immigration law. That it has been upheld in the courts. So the president has been right. We've been right there with him the entire time. I've been a very staunch supporter of our borders, but the Democrats simply don't want to do that. But you know what? It's happening, and it's because we have a strong president that knows what to do and it does the right thing.
Well, speaking of sanctuary cities, I just recently took a trip to the border in Arizona, and the city of Tucson, they recently, I believe it was in November, rejected becoming a sanctuary city. How in Texas are you seeing results or issues from sanctuary cities spill into your state? Do you see that at all in Texas?
Yes, ma'am. We see it very frequently. And just a few short years ago, Rachel, the Democrats had a totally different line that they were telling. They wanted to secure the border. The labor unions did not want workers coming in from foreign illegals for taking American jobs. And yet now it's been a complete flip-flop. The Democrats don't want to stop. In fact, they want to legitimize illegal crossings, and they want to open border. There's no question about it. This is what the sanctuaries are all about. And the reason they do is the very bottom line. The bottom line of having open borders is that they want people coming into this country being dependent upon the government from the very get-go, And then when they do become enfranchised to vote, they will vote Democrat. If they thought that these illegals were going to vote Republican, I can tell you they'd be singing a whole different tune. Already in several sanctuary areas, especially the state of California, illegal aliens are already voting in local and state elections. Did you know that? And incredibly, they offered a bill just a few weeks back to allow them to vote throughout the country in federal elections. Unfortunately, we're in the minority, the Republicans, in the House of Representatives now, but fortunately, the Senate is still in Republican hands, so that is not going anywhere.
Well, you mentioned how you are seeing effects of sanctuary cities in Texas. If there is one result from illegal immigration that you see most often, most widespread in Texas, what would that be?
Well, I can tell you, in my district alone, in one of my counties, we have a school district there that has their student population has grown almost 400% in about 5 years. And it's simply due to illegal aliens coming into the area and the open borders down south. My district is probably 250 miles from the border, and we're being impacted by it. And we have to educate these people. We've got to medicate these people. Every single one of the Democrat candidates for president have said they want to give free medical care to people who are here illegally. And so I think the sanctuary cities, and they're in Texas too, Houston, Austin, there's a number of them, the criminal activity, the people who are being impacted negatively due to crimes, and also the overwhelming numbers and the costs of treating these people medically and educating them in our school districts. And this one school district is being overwhelmed.
How are you seeing, and are you seeing effects of drug trafficking in Texas? When I was in Arizona, one of the sheriffs in Pinal County talked a lot about the huge influx of illegal drugs they see coming across the border and how those are funneled into the country from the desert in Arizona, where illegal immigrants come up from Mexico and come into Arizona. Are you seeing that in Texas?
Yes, we are definitely seeing the results of an open border where we have an enormous number of illegal drugs coming in. I have voted repeatedly for anti-opioid, anti-drug smuggling legislation. And when we see the percentage of these drugs coming in across our border and 75,000 Americans dying of opioid overdoses and drug overdoses each year, it's just an incredible thought. So that is another really visible aspect and result of our open borders.
Well, the Democrats have a piece of immigration legislation called the New Way Forward Act. I know that you have a lot of thoughts on this. What do you think about this piece of legislation?
It's the worst piece of legislation I've ever seen in my life. It is, and incredibly, I can't understand how anybody who is a United States congressman representing a district of the United States of America can offer a bill with a straight face that's this bad. We would go from having sanctuary cities and sanctuary states to a sanctuary nation if this thing passes. And I think at last count they had 44 to 50 Democrats are already on this thing. Just essentially open borders. And incredibly, they would, if you commit a crime in the country today as an illegal, you're supposed to be deported. If you're sentenced to a 1 year prison sentence, if you spend a year, then you're supposed to be you're eligible for deportation. This would make it 5 years. Basically, you can hardly commit any kind of a crime that would have an automatic deportation. It's going to give an enormous amount of jurisdiction and authority to immigration judges. They can overrule deportation orders. The whole thing is just insane. And it's a prescription for disaster for the United States. And, it's the new way forward. I think even many of the Democrats know that this really is a bridge too far. And I'm hoping that the American people will see this on November and see some of these crazy, insane policies and that are being put forward by these Democrats, and just simply vote these people out of office. Who wants Medicare for all? To spend $3.2 trillion a year, almost the amount of our whole budget, just for health care. Who wants the Green New Deal, which would eliminate fracking and oil and gas production, cattle raising? Unbelievably, this would destroy a number of states, and including the great state of Texas. If you get rid of fracking, you're going to put about 7 million people out of a job across this country. You'll cost the gross domestic product at least $7 to $8 trillion, and it's just not going to work. This is just another way for our comrade Bernie and the rest of these socialists to ruin America.
Well, there's a county in your state, Harris County, and they recently approved a legal fund for illegals to give them defense funds. What is your thought on that development?
Another insane plan. This was come up with by our county judge down there, Judge Hidalgo, and basically what she's going to do is to have the citizen taxpayers of Harris County, Texas, that's Houston, to basically pay for legal representation for illegal aliens if they get in trouble with the law, deportation, immigration, anything. She's gonna load that cost onto the backs of her own voting citizens to pay for. It's insane, and I'm hoping that the people of Harris County will certainly not appreciate what that is intended to do in the great county of Harris County and in my district, as I represent part of Harris County.
Well, the Trump administration had recently announced that they've reached 100 miles of border wall construction along the southern border with Mexico. What other measures, along with building a wall, do you think is necessary to really secure our border and reform our immigration system?
There's a number of things we can do. Certainly the barrier. We've already seen some of the walls been completed near El Paso. Illegal crossings are down 80% where these barriers are. We've got to have more personnel. They've got to have more resources. We've got to devote. We have to start taking care of our border patrol and our CBP and all the federal agencies that are involved. We've got to start funding them like we do our military. This essentially is an invasion. We saw in May of last year we had 144,000 illegals that just walked across the border, gave themselves up, and were turned loose into the interior of the country. And so when you have, and I mentioned this at the beginning of our conversation today, you've got well over 1 million illegal aliens, many of them criminals, who have already had their day in court. The federal government has adjudicated their cases and given them orders to be removed from the country. If we don't, that's called interior enforcement. If we would start deporting these people, the Democrats don't want a single one of them out here, even the criminals. It's incredible. But if we don't start carrying these deportations out of these criminals and these people that have already had their day in court, we will continue the green light, the welcome sign, to come in, incentivizing people from all over the world to come in and into our nation. We can help. I can tell you on the refugee program, not the immigration, but on the refugee program, that we bring in a number of refugees each year. It's a United Nations operation, basically. We can actually help 12 refugees in their own countries for the price of bringing one into the United States of America.
Crazy we don't talk about that.
They need to be talking about it, and because in fact this is where Mrs. Omar, where Representative Omar, she came in from Somalia. She was one of these refugees. Now she's sitting in the United States House of Representatives, and disparaging her adopted country, which is an amazing thing to me. We open our arms to her, but this is exactly what we have to start remedying. We've got to have some common sense. Our elected leaders are going to have to start doing things for the benefit of their own people. We want to continue to be a compassionate Judeo-Christian country to help those that are downtrodden, that need help or oppressed, and we can do a much better job to help them in their own countries and we have for many, many decades, than to bring them in here and have them loaded onto the backs of our local and state tax-paying citizens, the federal taxpayers as well. We got to be smart. We want to be a sovereign nation, and we want to be a nation that is not broke.
That is very true. You mentioned you were talking about Customs and Border Patrol and the work that they do. And when I was in Arizona with the sheriff of Pinal County, he was mentioning that a lot of times Border Patrol ends up in other law enforcement agencies being a humanitarian response to people that are out caught in the desert, illegal immigrants that don't have enough water or food, and then they end up being called out to help those people.
Right.
What is your perspective of how the work of the CBP is portrayed in media? A lot of times, I think it's not news that it's not favorable. What is your thought on that?
They're constantly criticized, demonized by the left. They even want to abolish ICE. I mean, that'd be like saying, let's get rid of your local police department. You don't need those people. They just do bad things. You got to have law enforcement. We have to be a nation of laws, as I've already said. Absolutely. And the left just constantly criticizes them. I feel sorry for these people. I've met and worked with some of them. I've been on the border a number of times. I'm the House, the chairman, the co-chairman of the House Border Security Caucus. I've been to that border probably 5 or 6 times, and been from from San Diego, California, all the way back to McAllen, Texas. So I've been all up and down that border. And it's as I said in the beginning, I think this is probably the most serious thing that this country faces. Could lead to our demise, our bankruptcy, loss of sovereignty, and the Democrats simply want open borders and pushing socialist programs. It's a prescription for the demise of our nation.
We mentioned socialism, and we're here talking live at CPAC, and the theme this year for CPAC is socialism versus the American dream. So as we wrap up, why is the American dream the antidote, the fix to socialism?
Well, I think, the American dream has always been alive and well, and that's one reason. I have 16 grandchildren, Rachel, and that's one reason I ran for office. I want to see this country continue to give the opportunity for the American dream to all young people, in fact, young and old, that are entering our country. Our family were immigrants at one time as well, and so we have absolutely nothing but love for immigrants, but they have to do it the right way, and they also have to be immigrants that are willing to pay their way and not come up here and get on public assistance. And that will do a day's work and will love America, not come up here and fly their former nation's flags. If they're so good, don't fly their flag. Fly the American flag. And I think this is what a lot of people they have a problem with. And it's nothing against immigration. It's simply those that we want people to come in here and make America a better country, to love this nation and appreciate its history and what it has meant to the rest of the world. We have certainly, as Reagan said, we have been a shining city on a hill, a beacon of freedom, and we need to continue that. And if we go socialist and we have open borders, it won't last.
Well, Congressman Babin, thank you so much for being with us on the Daily Signal podcast.
Great to be with you, Rachel. See ya.
Thanks for being here.
All right.